My husband Eric stole $2 million from our joint accounts to fund his 29-year-old mistress Vanessa's lifestyle. He transferred our 20-year savings to offshore accounts, then told me, "You're nothing without me." But what this cheating bastard didn't know was that I'm Claire Morrison, forensic accountant who'd been documenting his financial crimes for months. Eric been planning my financial destruction while I played the devoted wife, never suspecting I was building a federal case against him. What Eric didn't know was that every forged signature had been photographed, and what he definitely didn't know was that the pathetic old woman he'd discarded had already handed his crimes over to the FBI. I stepped off the scorching asphalt, my heart a cold, steady drum against my ribs, and walked straight towards them. Eric was just picking up 2 iced coffees when he saw me. His face tightened, a flicker of annoyance, then alarm. "Sweetheart," I cooed, my voice deliberately light as I slid my body to block his path. "Could you cover the tab for me?" A line of impatient customers waited behind him. The air turned awkward. Puzzled glances darted between us. "So, not a couple then?" whispers started. "Busted," someone muttered, already fumbling for their phone. Others looked thrilled, as if they'd stumbled onto a live reality show. Eric, clearly caught off guard, didn't dare refuse. He swiped his card, his jaw clenched. As he turned to leave, I feigned sudden recognition of Vanessa. "Well, hello there," I offered, my tone neutral, almost friendly. "You two seem quite close. What a coincidence, running into each other like this." Vanessa's practiced smile faltered. She shook her head quickly, her voice a nervous flutter. "Emily, I'm just here with Eric. We're meeting a client." "Really?" I stared at her, my gaze cool and unwavering. "Is the meeting over already then?" She bit her lip, flustered, her eyes welling up as she shot a helpless look at Eric. That's when he lost it. He leaned in, hissing under his breath, "What in God's name are you trying to do? Stop making a scene. Go home." Oh, he had the nerve to be angry. After all these years of my quiet compliance, my refusal to pick fights, he thought he could just walk all over me. Or perhaps he just assumed I'd aged out of having a backbone. "You think I'm making a scene?" I raised my voice, sarcasm dripping from every syllable. "Tell me, folks." I addressed the now captivated audience. "My husband's on a date with another woman, and I'm not even allowed to ask a question. What's the matter, Eric? Was the client today supposed to be the owner of this coffee shop?" Laughter erupted from the crowd. Vanessa's face went from crimson to a ghastly white. Someone chimed in with a smirk. "Client, huh? We overheard them talking about going fishing tonight." Another added, "Girl, don't believe a damn word those two say." The voices swirled, each comment a tiny, satisfying pinprick. Vanessa couldn't take it. She covered her face and fled. Eric shot me a venomous glare and moved to follow. I let out a cold laugh. "What's wrong, Eric? Trying to make that late-night fishing trip with your mermaid official?" He froze mid-step, his face darkening as if he'd swallowed poison. The first salvo had landed. This was just the beginning. He thought he knew me. He had no idea the woman he was dealing with now. He thought leaving his mistress's stockings in our bed would drive me crazy. He didn't know it was the first piece of evidence in my trap. "Divorce." Eric spat the word through gritted teeth the moment the car doors slammed shut, cocooning us in a bubble of seething animosity. I sat in the passenger seat, feigning nonchalance, as I casually sifted through the clutter in the center console. A lipstick in a shade I never wore, a cheap hair clip, the cloying scent of women's perfume, and, oh, the pièce de résistance, a pair of torn black stockings. Classy. "Utterly disgusting," I muttered, pulling my hand back as if I'd touched something diseased. Eric flushed, a tide of embarrassment warring with his righteous indignation. "Since you already know everything," he snarled, quickly regaining his composure, "let's just cut to the chase. Let's go file the divorce papers today." "Hold on," I turned to him, my voice as cold and sharp as ice shards. "Eric, tell me, why?" He let out a mocking laugh, a harsh, ugly sound. "Because you're ugly," he sneered, his voice calm now, deliberately cruel. "Because you've turned into a petty, small-town housewife." Every word that followed was soaked in venom. All you ever do is whine about grocery prices or nag about our daughter's grades. You've failed at parenting. Your own parents don't respect you. So tell me, what value do you even have anymore? The words were knives, twisting in my chest. I wasn't made of stone. This was the man who had once whispered promises of forever, now spewing poison designed to hit my softest, most vulnerable spots. The pain was a physical ache, crawling through my bones. My fingertips went cold, sweat pooling in my palms. Do you know why I became this version of myself? I clenched my jaw, my voice sharp as a blade. It was you, Eric. You, with your endless speeches about how children need their mother, how family comes first. That's why I gave up my career. That's why I stayed home, ensuring you had the stability to build yours. You enjoyed the fruits of my sacrifice, and now you turn around and treat me like I'm nothing more than a woman who lives in the kitchen. Well, that's because, he started. Spare me, I cut him off, my voice steady but resolute, the tremor in my hands the only betrayal of my inner turmoil. Everything I gave up for this family, for you, doesn't get measured by your paycheck or your fleeting desires. I took a deep breath, anchoring myself. I'll agree to the divorce, I continued firmly, meeting his hateful gaze. But since you're the one who cheated, per our prenuptial agreement, the one you insisted on, remember, you walk away with only a quarter of the marital assets. If you're fine with that, let's go sign the paperwork at the lawyer's office today. You stayed home because you wanted to. No one forced you, he yelled. Only an idiot would believe that, I shot back. Will you shut up already? I'd run out of patience, the carefully constructed dam of my composure finally cracking. You want your mistress and my money. You thought I'd just keep playing housekeeper for free, cleaning up your messes, including the stench of your affairs. I flung the car door open and stepped out, my voice cold and sharp, cutting through the humid air. We're done here, Eric. If you think the split is unfair, take it to court. Otherwise, don't waste my time. And don't you dare try to short me a single cent. The gauntlet was thrown. He thought this would be easy. He was about to find out just how wrong he was. Chloe was about to enter her final year of high school, her grades still stubbornly middling, a constant source of anxiety for everyone. Well, mostly for me. In the past, I would have already started planning meticulously. Intensive tutoring sessions, practice tests, color-coded study schedules. But now, I let it go. If she didn't want to study, so be it. Forcing her would only lead to more resentment and backfire spectacularly. I wouldn't make myself sick over something I ultimately couldn't control. As for our relationship, if she didn't want to see me right now, I'd give her space. Later, when she was ready, we would sit down and talk properly. The city heat was becoming unbearable, mirroring the oppressive atmosphere of my life. I booked a stay at a quiet resort nestled in the Adirondack Mountains, a desperate bid to catch my breath and escape the suffocating mess Eric had created. I only stopped by the house to grab my passport and a few essentials. The moment I stepped through the door, however, I was greeted by a scene straight out of a low-budget soap opera. The entire Bennett family, it seemed, or at least a significant disapproving contingent of aunts, was there. And Vanessa, bless her audacious heart, was bustling around the kitchen as if she owned the place, a smug little smile playing on her lips. Emily, look who finally decided to come home, Eric sneered, his voice laced with heavy sarcasm. His eyes darted behind me, as if expecting to see a clandestine lover in tow. Relax, Eric, I replied with a sugary smile that didn't reach my eyes. I didn't bring a man home. I'm not you. Then I turned to Chloe, who was hovering awkwardly near the stairs, and handed her a pair of limited edition headphones she'd been wanting for months. Sweetheart, I'm heading to the Adirondacks for a little vacation. I'll bring you back a lovely gift, all right? She rolled her eyes, a perfect imitation of teenage indifference. I couldn't care less where you go. I'll miss you, I said lightly, patting her shoulder before heading upstairs to pack. The second I walked into our bedroom, my bedroom, I stopped dead. Multiple large suitcases were splayed on the floor, two already open, their contents spilling out. Vanessa's clothes were hanging from the closet racks, and my belongings, my personal items, were shoved messily into a corner like discarded junk. "Eric," I called from the top of the stairs, my voice dangerously calm. "Do you want to pack Vanessa's things yourself, or should I do it for you?" The clatter in the kitchen went dead silent. "Don't be so unreasonable, Emily," Eric finally called back, his voice stiff, clearly reacting to Vanessa's undoubtedly panicked expression. I chuckled, a dry, humorless sound. "You really don't get it, do you? This house is jointly owned. I am still your legal wife. Who in the seven hells gave you the right to let someone else invade my space, my home, my bedroom?" "Perfect," I laughed coldly. "In that case, I won't hold back either. Maybe I'll invite my new boyfriend, Daniel, to move in for 6 months. Let's see how you enjoy being the one stuck in a marriage while your wife is openly sleeping with someone else. No point pretending anymore, is there? The masks are off. Let's all get wonderfully, irrevocably dirty together." Eric's face went pitch black. Still, he didn't say a word, just glared. So, I pulled out my phone. "Hey, Daniel," I chirped into the receiver. "Bring your stuff over. I'll send you the address." "Emily," Eric exploded, kicking over a chair in the living room with a crash. "You really want to drag this out, huh? Fine. You want to play legal owner? I'll buy another house and move in with Vanessa. Let's see what else you've got to throw at me." I leaned against the door frame, arms crossed, watching with detached amusement as Vanessa sobbed and started, very slowly, to pack. Eric couldn't take more than a few minutes of her histrionics. He grabbed his keys and stormed out, muttering some lame excuse about needing air. Later, Chloe told me Eric had officially moved in with Vanessa. Even his mother, Lucy, ever the enabler, decided to move in with them, which meant Chloe, with no real alternative, had no choice but to leave our house. My house now, in spirit if not yet fully in legal deed, and go with them. They were living in an upscale, pretentious neighborhood not far from us. But the house, Chloe reported with a hint of disdain, was rented, not owned. She had overheard them fighting multiple times, loud, ugly arguments, mostly over whether to buy a home. But every argument ended unresolved, hanging in the air like a bad smell. I told her, "Forget their mess, sweetheart. It's not your problem to solve. Focus on yourself." Before school started, I returned home, feeling somewhat rejuvenated. I brought Chloe a few gifts, a delicate handmade silver necklace from a local artisan, and a box of expensive scented candles I knew she'd like. But it was Vanessa who answered the door, her triumph at being installed in Eric's new life radiating off her like cheap perfume. The moment she saw me, her expression soured. "What are you doing here?" she demanded, her voice sharp. "Looking to stir up more drama?" "I'm here to see Chloe," I said calmly, then added with a dismissive glance around their rented foyer. "And by the way, it's just a rental, dear. No need to act like you've moved into a palace." She spluttered, so furious she couldn't form a coherent sentence. I handed Chloe the gifts, who appeared looking wary. "Come on," I suggested casually. "Let's grab a bite. You've lost weight." "That's because her cooking is disgusting," Chloe grumbled, her earlier reticence vanishing. "Grandma Lucy's blood pressure is up from arguing about it constantly." "You're exaggerating," I chuckled, though a part of me was grimly satisfied. "No, I'm not," Chloe insisted, her voice rising with indignation. "The kitchen looks like a disaster zone. She never cleans. Dad's white shirts are all stained yellow, like he rolled in mud. And whenever Dad's not home, she picks fights with Grandma. Endless, screeching fights." She waved her hands around dramatically as she talked, acting out every scene with surprising comedic flair. Vanessa turned a shade of puce. "You're making things up," Vanessa shrieked. The trip to Boston was supposed to be about Chloe's future, a tour of Ivy League campuses. Eric, surprisingly, volunteered to drive us, and Vanessa, predictably, tagged along, desperate for a romantic getaway photo op. My plan was to let Chloe soak in the academic atmosphere of Harvard and MIT. She was thrilled. Vanessa, however, complained incessantly. This trip is so boring, she whined during a tour of Harvard Yard. I'd rather be at a ski resort or shopping in New York, Chloe finally snapped. Her face tightened with frustration. You destroyed our family just to chase your own selfish desires, she accused Eric, her voice trembling but clear. You're not a husband, and this isn't a real family anymore. It's just embarrassing. And really, she turned her glare on Vanessa. What makes her so much better than my mom? She never stops whining. If you didn't want to come, then why did you agree in the first place? If you want to go skiing, go on your own. It takes a special kind of fool to fall for someone so utterly classless. Later, after a campus tour, I took Chloe for breakfast. Just as I finished paying, I noticed several missed calls from Vanessa. I called back. The moment the line connected, I was hit with her hysterical sobbing. Emily, are you trying to drive me to the edge? What happened? Eric left me. He just walked off and disappeared. Her voice was so nasal from crying it gave me a headache. Then call him, I suggested calmly. If that doesn't work, call the police. Why are you calling me? He blocked my number, that bastard, she wailed. You brought me on this trip. You have to take responsibility and get me back. She was sobbing so hard she could barely breathe. I asked where she was. Sure enough, she was still standing in the same spot where we'd left them hours ago. I hung up and turned to Chloe. So, what do you think we should do? Well, she hesitated, clearly torn. Honestly, I think she deserves it. But leaving her stranded like that, it feels kind of wrong. You mean it feels a little heartless? I smiled gently. Chloe, remember this. If you repay evil with kindness, what do you use to repay kindness? Not everyone is worthy of your compassion, especially people with twisted values. If you try to be the good guy to them, they'll treat you like you owe them. They won't be grateful. They'll just resent you for not letting them drain you completely dry. She nodded thoughtfully. But it's good you see this for yourself, I added. It's time you got a first-hand look at what being the nice one really gets you with people like her. Sure enough, Vanessa was still there, a pathetic, shivering mess. When she saw us approaching, her face twisted instantly. Took you long enough. You left me out here in the wind on purpose, didn't you, you witch? Chloe's face flushed red, puffed up like an angry little muffin. How can you talk like that? She snapped. You disrupted our plans, and now you're blaming us for being late. Then why did you even call us in the first place? Vanessa rolled her eyes, completely dismissive, then barked out orders like she was royalty. I haven't had breakfast yet. Take me to eat. Then we need to hit the museum for photos and go to the lake for a boat ride. My friends are waiting for me to post pictures. Unbelievably shallow. Chloe finally lost her patience. We're only here to get you back to the hotel. Whatever sightseeing you want to do, that's your problem. Don't expect us to follow your ridiculous itinerary. You're heartless. With Eric gone, Vanessa was completely unfiltered, her tone sharp and brash. It was your mum's idea to invite me. Now you two just want to ditch me. Emily's a total bitch, and now her brat wants to play tough with me too. I guess I need to teach you some respect. She raised her hand to slap Chloe. The call connected quickly. I turned the camera toward Chloe's tear-streaked face. Eric, I stated calmly, Vanessa just made your daughter cry, and tried to hit her. Before Eric could respond, I flipped the camera to Vanessa, my voice dropping to an icy calm. Didn't I warn you? Since you're so willing to play the victim, maybe it's time you learned what real consequences feel like. You wanted to cause trouble? Well, trouble has found you. Gasps came from the crowd. Emily, Vanessa screamed, lunging again. Eric, on the other end of the video call, shouted my name, a mixture of anger and panic in his voice. I easily sidestepped Vanessa, letting her stumble. Chloe panicked. Mum, the police are here. Don't worry, sweetheart, I said, smiling to reassure her. We haven't done anything wrong. She did. Vanessa, seeing the police approach, immediately shrank back, her bravado vanishing. I sneered. Didn't you say you were going to call the police and report us for abandoning you? Well, here they are. Your wish has come true. The police, involved due to the public domestic dispute, began to mediate. After hearing the full story, corroborated by several bystanders, the officer's expression shifted into something more knowing. Vanessa insisted on an injury examination from my assault. The officer agreed. We'll check for injuries, ma'am. But just so you know, your verbal abuse and attempted assault towards these women, particularly a minor, will also be handled according to the law. Vanessa immediately stopped talking, her face paling. She kept crying, seeking comfort from Eric, who had rushed there after the call ended. The police exchanged looks, clearly uncomfortable with Vanessa's manipulative behavior. Your daughter is right here, sir, one officer said to Eric sternly. As a father, can't you put yourself in her shoes and think about how this affects her? Eric quickly nodded, offering a nervous, placating smile. The moment they left the police station, Eric exploded at Vanessa. Can you stop causing drama? You've nearly ruined our family, and now you're not satisfied. Such a jerk. They'd both caused the mess, but now he was placing all the blame squarely on her. Vanessa stayed silent, occasionally sobbing, casting venomous glances at me. What a fool. I turned to Chloe. So, how's the experience of being the nice one? It's horrible, she replied, shaking her head vigorously, but then her eyes lit up. Mum, I finally understand what you were saying. From now on, I'm not going to let those so-called morals control me, and I won't be the weak, nice person anymore, not with people who don't deserve it. Good girl. I couldn't help but smile and ruffle her hair, feeling a deep sense of pride. The Boston deception had been an ugly, stressful ordeal, but it had forged a new understanding and resilience in my daughter, and it had pushed Eric and Vanessa one step closer to their inevitable implosion. The dramatic scene with Vanessa and the police didn't derail our trip plans entirely, though it cast a pall over Eric's already sour mood. Later, he suggested once again, with a pathetic attempt at optimism, that he join Chloe and me for the rest of our campus tours. Chloe coldly refused. We're better off not being around each other, Dad. Don't force it. Eric was momentarily stunned into silence by her bluntness. I took a few steps forward with Chloe, then glanced back at him. He stood there, forlorn and pitiful, Vanessa having already flounced off in a huff after he refused to buy her an apology designer bag. Well, he deserved it. Sorry I can't stay with you anymore, he mumbled, as if he'd been invited. I gave him a blank look. What is this, Eric? Emily, he stammered, looking unsure, lost. Actually, you and Vanessa. You both have your good qualities. So what? I stared at him, my gaze unwavering, making him blush and look away like a chastened schoolboy. I sneered. A man who tries to live off the emotional labor of two women will end up starving under the table, Eric. You can't have it both ways. He wasn't having it. But you didn't really divorce me yet, did you? Look at other women. They'd be crying their eyes out over this, making scenes. You haven't made a decisive move to end it legally. So, aren't you still holding on to me, just a little? So, what do you want, Eric? I asked, following his twisted line of thought with a chilling calmness. He smiled awkwardly, a hopeful, pathetic little twitch of his lips. Can you just be a little more tolerant of Vanessa? We're a family after all, in a way. Don't make this worse than it has to be. I slapped him, without hesitation. The sound cracked in the quiet hotel corridor. Fine, I bit out, my voice trembling with a rage I thought I had buried. I'll tolerate Vanessa, but I won't tolerate you anymore. He covered his stinging cheek, stumbling back. I took a step closer, my voice dropping to a cold, lethal whisper. Was your brain left in your mother's placenta when she gave birth to you? Look at how pathetic you are, pretending to be all loving and conflicted in front of me. You've conveniently forgotten who refused to grant the divorce on fair terms, who couldn't let go of the assets, who dragged this out hoping I'd break. I thought you might have some shred of sense left, but you were about to pull off an even bigger stunt of idiocy. Eric, cornered by my stare, by the truth, backed away, stumbling into the elevator that had just opened. I pointed at him, my hand shaking, and shouted, my voice echoing, This time, Eric, I'm divorcing you, and I will take you for everything you're worth. He ignored me, frantically pressing the elevator button, escaping without even a backward glance. I couldn't help but let out a laugh, a harsh, frustrated sound. How had that once shy, handsome boy I'd married turned into this sorry, spineless excuse of a man? Chloe leaned against me, gently comforting me. Mom, don't let him get to you. He's not worth it. She snuggled into my arms, trying to cheer me up. And though I wasn't truly angry at him anymore, more like disgusted and profoundly disappointed, I couldn't help but think, some people, even after sleeping beside you for 20 years, you still can't truly see through them until they betray you. So completely. The facade had crumbled, and what lay beneath was uglier than I could have ever imagined. With Eric and Vanessa temporarily, or so I hoped, out of the immediate picture, the air finally felt lighter, cleaner. I had planned to stay in Boston with Chloe for the remainder of the holidays, to truly focus on her and enjoy some drama-free time. But then, news came suddenly, delivered by a frantic call from one of Eric's perpetually anxious aunts. Lucy had been hospitalized. Apparently, after Eric returned alone, Vanessa, in a rage, had barged into their rented house, started screaming accusations, and during the ensuing melee, had allegedly pushed Lucy, who then fell and hit her head on the corner of a marble coffee table. I hadn't intended to get involved. Lucy had made my life a living hell for 17 years with her passive aggression, her constant criticism, her entitled demands. But Chloe, despite everything, was still worried about her grandmother. So, with a heavy heart and a sense of grim foreboding, I took her home. When we arrived at the hospital, the entire Bennett clan, or at least its most vocal members, was already there, performing their well-rehearsed roles in the family drama. Eric's aunts, a chorus of concerned disapproval, had shown up one after another, wiping away crocodile tears as they filled me in on the latest tragedy. "That crazy woman, Vanessa!" One of them, Aunt Carol, hissed, clutching a lace handkerchief. She barged into the house like a madwoman, started screaming at poor Lucy, and then she pushed her. Lucy's head hit the corner of the table. "This can't just be swept under the rug, Emily. It's attempted murder, I tell you." They were all suitably indignant, their voices rising with outrage, a symphony of manufactured sympathy. One of the younger aunts, Susan, who had always been particularly adept at feigning affection when it suited her, clung to my hand, her eyes welling up with theatrical tears. "Oh, Emily, please, you have to forgive Eric. He was just manipulated, blinded by that awful, scheming woman. Vanessa is nothing compared to you. Lucy always said, in her heart of hearts, that you were the daughter-in-law she was proudest of, the strong one. What a load of revisionist history. What she needs now," Susan continued, her voice thick with emotion, "is someone kind and dependable like you by her side. She's always seen you as her own daughter, truly." I finally spoke, my voice calm, but carrying an edge they couldn't or wouldn't ignore. "Heal?" I repeated, a small, humorless smile playing on my lips. "That's a lovely sentiment, Aunt Mildred, a truly touching aspiration. But healing, as I understand it, requires honesty, accountability. Lucy is in this state because of a chain of events Eric, your foolish nephew, set in motion the moment he decided his marriage vows were optional. Vanessa was merely the instrument of his choices, the consequence of his desires." Their carefully arranged expressions of concern faltered. Eric, who had been listening intently by the doorway, flinched as if struck. He opened his mouth, then closed it again, a muscle twitching in his cheek. "Emily, I know you're angry." "Angry?" I laughed, a short, sharp sound. "Oh, Eric, I'm so far beyond angry. I'm enlightened. You thought leaving those stockings, your mistress's cheap, torn stockings, in our marital bed would drive me crazy, didn't you? You thought I'd have a hysterical breakdown, scream, throw things, give you the perfect excuse to paint me as the unstable wife you just had to leave." I saw a flicker of recognition, of dawning horror in his eyes. "But you didn't know, did you? You didn't know that was my trap. Not a physical one, nothing so crude. It was the moment I stopped being your victim and started being your adversary. Those stockings weren't just proof of your disgusting affair. They were the first piece of evidence I collected. The first clear sign that you were preparing to discard me. And I decided then and there I wouldn't go quietly. I wouldn't go at all, not on your terms. The silence that followed was thick, suffocating, filled with unspoken accusations and profound discomfort. Eric's face was a mask of abject fury and palpable shame. His aunts exchanged uneasy, panicked glances. This was the climax of their little hospital bedside performance, and it had fallen spectacularly, irrevocably flat. I had refused to play the forgiving wife, the dutiful daughter-in-law, the savior come to clean up his monumental mess yet again. I saw Chloe watching from the side, a small, almost imperceptible nod of understanding passing between us. She was learning, faster than I ever had, that standing your ground wasn't cruelty, it was survival. The charade was over. The pressure on Eric mounted exponentially from all sides. His family, deeply embarrassed by the public spectacle and the damage to the Bennett name, urged him to settle the divorce quickly, quietly, and generously to make the Vanessa problem, and, by extension, the Emily problem, disappear. His business associates, many of whom had undoubtedly seen the viral videos or heard the salacious gossip, were starting to whisper, their smiles a little too tight, their handshakes a little too brief. The carefully constructed image of the successful, respectable, pillar of the community Eric Bennett was cracking, fissures spiderwebbing across its polished surface, revealing the flawed, deceitful, and frankly, rather pathetic man beneath. His desperate attempts to paint himself as a victim, a man led astray by a younger, more conniving woman, fell utterly flat. She manipulated me, he'd wail about Vanessa, his voice thick with self-pity. She was crazy, unstable. You chose her, Eric, I'd remind him, my tone unyielding. You pursued her. You invited her into our life, into our home, into our daughter's orbit. You coached her. You financed her. Her craziness, as you now call it, was perfectly acceptable to you when it served your purposes. It only became a problem when she became a liability, when her desperation threatened to expose yours. One particular moment stood out, a moment of cold, theatrical precision. Ms. Davies brought up the infamous stockings, the ones that had been the genesis of my quiet war. Mr. Bennett, she asked, her tone deceptively mild, her eyes, however, sharp as a hawk's. Your wife has mentioned a rather memorable incident involving a pair of black lace stockings, purportedly belonging to Ms. Sterling, left quite openly, almost displayed, in your marital bedroom. Can you perhaps illuminate the circumstances surrounding this discovery for the record? Eric squirmed in his expensive suit, his face paling visibly. He tugged at his collar. I don't recall specifically. It was a mistake, an oversight, no doubt. Things were chaotic. An oversight, Mr. Bennett? Ms. Davies pressed, her voice dropping slightly, drawing everyone in the room to attention. Or was it perhaps a deliberate act of provocation, a calculated gesture designed to distress your wife, to push her into an emotional outburst, an outburst that you could then conveniently use against her in subsequent divorce proceedings to paint her as unstable, irrational? He blustered, denied, his voice rising in pitch, but his eyes darted nervously towards his own lawyer, who looked increasingly grim. The implications hung heavy, acrid, in the sterile air of the deposition room. It wasn't just about infidelity anymore. It was about premeditated psychological abuse, about a cold, calculated attempt to manipulate and destroy a woman he had once promised to love and cherish. Then Ms. Davies played her trump card, the one I had been holding on to for months. A short, crystal clear, and utterly damning voice recording. It was from the chief financial officer at Eric's company, a woman I had carefully, patiently cultivated as an ally. A woman who, it turned out, had her own grievances with Eric's increasingly erratic and unethical behavior. In the recording, Eric's voice, unmistakable and arrogant, could be heard instructing the CFO to creatively reallocate certain substantial funds that were unequivocally part of our marital assets, into accounts that would be less visible during any potential divorce settlement. He was also heard disparaging me in vile terms, boasting to the CFO about how he would crush that bitch and leave me with absolutely nothing but the clothes on her back. The CFO, a woman of quiet integrity and meticulous record-keeping, had decided her loyalty lay with ethics, not with a corrupt boss. Eric's legal team, previously so aggressive, so dismissive, so confident in their client's bluster, became markedly, almost comically, conciliatory overnight. The evidence against him was overwhelming, irrefutable, not just of garden variety infidelity, but of deliberate financial misconduct, perjury, and a clear, malicious intent to defraud me. The whispers about his questionable business practices grew into audible murmurs, then outright discussions in boardrooms and at country clubs. Some of his long-term partners began to discreetly distance themselves, their lawyers advising them to sever ties before the contagion spread. The charming, successful, invincible facade Eric Bennett had so carefully presented to the world for decades was irrevocably shattered, leaving only the ugly, grasping reality. Negotiations for the divorce settlement resumed, but the power dynamic had undergone a seismic shift. I was no longer the supplicant, the wronged wife hoping for a fair shake. I was the victor, holding all the high cards. Ms. Davies, with a steely glint in her eye, laid out our terms, a significantly larger portion of the marital assets than the insulting quarter he had initially, and so arrogantly assumed I'd meekly accept. Full, unencumbered ownership of the family, home, our home, my home, and substantial non-negotiable alimony, enough to ensure not just my comfort, but Chloe's future security, including her education, wherever she chose to pursue it. His lawyers protested, feebly at first, then with a growing air of resignation. Their arguments lacked conviction, their threats hollow. They knew we had him cornered. Legally and morally, I sipped my lukewarm tea, observing him with the detached interest of an entomologist studying a particularly unappealing specimen. What we once had, Eric, I stated, my voice devoid of inflection, you personally, systematically, and deliberately destroyed. You talk about Chloe? You brought your mistress into her home. You prioritized your sordid affair over her emotional well-being. You willingly created chaos and instability in her young life, all for your own selfish gratification. Don't you dare, my voice dropped, a dangerous edge creeping in, use our daughter now as a pawn to appeal to a sentimentality you yourself have systematically murdered within me. The finality of the signed divorce papers, delivered by courier in a crisp, impersonal envelope, brought not an explosion of triumphant joy, as one might expect from a true crime drama, but a quiet, profound, almost unearthly sense of relief. It was as if a massive, invisible weight I hadn't fully realized I was carrying, a burden of resentment, pain, and constant vigilance, had finally been lifted from my shoulders. The war, my silent, protracted war, was over. I had fought, not just for assets or revenge, but for my dignity, my sanity, and for the kind of future I wanted for myself and, more importantly, for my daughter. A future free from deceit and disrespect. Chloe was the first person I told. She was home from a study group, looking tired but focused. I simply handed her the official document. She read the first page, then looked up at me, her eyes, so like mine, yet holding a wisdom beyond her years, filled with a complex mix of emotions. Then she simply hugged me, a long, tight, fierce embrace that spoke volumes more than any words could. "I'm so incredibly proud of you, Mom," she whispered against my shoulder, her voice thick with emotion. Those words, that simple, heartfelt acknowledgement, meant more to me than any financial settlement, any legal victory. Through this ugly, protracted ordeal, she had seen me not as a passive victim, but as a fighter, a strategist, a woman who refused to be broken or silenced. She had learned valuable, if harsh, lessons about relationships, integrity, self-respect, and the critical importance of knowing one's own worth. Her grades, predictably, continued to soar, and her applications to her dream universities were submitted with a newfound confidence and a steely determination that mirrored my own. Life, slowly but surely, settled into a new, calmer rhythm.